Good day. Good to see you all. Yeah, I got to look at the time and see. Oh, good afternoon, right? Yeah. I said long days already. It's a good day. Started out things well. Got going this morning after a great day yesterday, and already had a number of meetings. Maybe I'll give you just a little rundown for a minute or two, and then talk a little bit about our special session package, the next series of bills that we've laid off the table. But for us, we started out early this morning in the office. Back to work for the people of Wisconsin. Nice ceremony and activities yesterday, but the important work really begins today, as we did yesterday afternoon, in calling the special session on jobs, as well as giving the Attorney General the legal right to join in a federal lawsuit challenging the federal mandate on health care. But really our focus yesterday, as it will be today and every day I'm in office, will be on jobs, the economy, and preparing for our next state budget. Started out earlier in the morning meeting with the Senate Democrat caucus. I had the opportunity to meet with the other three caucuses shortly after the election, and because of some of their challenges in terms of leadership changes, they had asked me to wait until their next caucus. That was today. Had a great meeting, great gathering with them. Many of the members of the current Senate Democrat caucus are people I've worked with in the past, either served with them when I was in the Assembly, they were in the Senate. Many of them, including Senator Miller, are people who served with me in the Assembly. So looking for a good working relationship with that caucus as well as the other three. Then met with Speaker Fitzgerald, Senate Majority Leader Fitzgerald, to talk about the special session and some items as we prepare for the state budget. Met a little bit later with Representative Barca and Senator Miller to talk about some of the same things, and had some good feedback from the two of them about some suggestions for things they'd like to see in the special session on jobs. We'll be working on that in the coming days, and hopefully we can work together on that. We'd love to have, if not on all the bills, at least on a majority of the bills, some good bipartisan votes. And then had a chance in this conference room to meet with the overwhelming number of new members in both the State Assembly and the State Senate. I told them, I reminded Senator Lazick, who introduced me, who I used to carpool with and occasionally ride Harleys with, that they all had the advantage that I didn't have. I never had an orientation. I was elected in June of 1993, and days later I took office, and we were in the midst of the budget debate and discussion at that time in the old Assembly chambers over at Martin Luther King, the temporary headquarters there, so never had that chance. So gave them a little bit of what wisdom I had as far as being a new member, and then working with us. And then later today, in just a few minutes, I'll be meeting with our cabinet, and for our first meeting of the cabinet, an outstanding cabinet. And then at the end of the day, we'll be going back to our budget briefing. So that's a little bit of what we're up to. Certainly for us, the most important part we wanted to talk about today is our special session on jobs, taking even more steps to move that forward. We've got a series of bill drafts that are being circulated, which we released to the lawmakers and now to the public. There'll be more to come along with that, but 5 specific areas. Excuse me. One is in the area of lawsuit reform, tort reform. You know, in the past, the Wall Street Journal once called us the Alabama of the North. We want to change that perception. We want to send a very clear message that employers should feel welcome to expanding and coming to Wisconsin. In doing so, we have a series of reforms when it comes to lawsuit abuse and litigation reform. Simple things like protecting businesses on Main Street. If you're a Ben Franklin, where I grew up down in Delavan, and you've got you're selling products, that local mom and pop business shouldn't be held liable for a manufacturer, maybe from out of state, that sent them prepackaged products to sell. If there was liability and someone was at error, the manufacturer should be the one that was responsible for that, not the Main Street business. We've got a series of other reforms that are included in that package that, again, will still protect consumers in the state, but do so in a way that doesn't allow us to send a poor message when it comes to jobs and the economy. Excuse me. The couple of other things in addition to our lawsuit reform. We're moving forward on our changes when it comes to health savings accounts, making them more affordable here in the state of Wisconsin. We also have a series of tax credits. The relocation tax credit we talked about is an incentive for businesses that aren't currently doing business in the state of Wisconsin to be drawn into Wisconsin, one of our marketing tools. as we seek to bring new businesses into the state, in addition to helping attract new businesses as well as help other existing businesses expand here. We're increasing the size of the economic development tax credit from $75 to $100 million. Again, one more tool for our new department, or for the Department of Commerce and the new Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to have one more tool in their tool chest to both retain, grow, and attract jobs here in the state of Wisconsin. And then finally, something that really ties into something I said yesterday very clearly, and that is, as I look ahead to the next budget, I made it clear to this legislature and to the public that I don't see tax increases as an option. And I don't see that just for some philosophical or political reason, but mainly because I think it would be devastating to our economic recovery if we saw a push from anyone here in the state capitol to increase taxes. And so, as part of the special call to make that message even clearer to the public, that it's not just coming from me, but coming from the members of the State Assembly and the State Senate. We have legislation that would require a supermajority for a tax increase that would go before the Assembly and the Senate, and I believe would send a clear message to job creators that tax increases are off the table. With that, I'm going to steal my water and then come right back and answer some questions.
Governor, we're going to see your cabinet members here in a couple of moments. Is your directive to them, your department heads, to eliminate currently unfilled positions?
Well, we'll have them look at those as part of the budget process itself. And I've been looking at this over the last 2 months and talked about it before the election. To me, if a position has been vacant, particularly in this current biennium, meaning if it's been vacant now for more than a year, almost a year and a half, to me that's a position we don't need. And short of those in public safety, where we've exempted that, we talked about this during the campaign, if a position has not been filled since the last budget was passed, we should permanently eliminate that in the next state budget.
Are these 5 bills the basis of your agenda in the special session? Are these your top priorities?
Yeah, we have at least one more, although, again, working with some of the Democrats that came in to meet with us, there may be more on top of that, but one more critical piece in terms of the tax cut for small businesses. We're just working out the logistics of that. Originally, we had talked about small businesses, 50 employees or under having a tax cut. We're still looking to target it to that group, but since the State Department of Revenue doesn't sort out on individual income taxes the difference between a small business and an individual just paying income taxes, we're looking at doing it through gross receipts, and we should have that ready to go in the next day or so.
Democrats have brought up a lot of their priorities. Anything that they've brought to your attention that you think you could get behind?
Yeah, Representative Barca, along with Senator Miller, but Barca in particular, who'd worked on some of the bipartisan economic development efforts, was interested in our what we've already talked about, moving towards more of an economic development corporation to give us more flexibility and viability. He's got some tweaks he'd like to see in that. I think we can work out, if not all, at least many of those. And they've got some ideas in terms of job tax credits, some other credits out there that I think we can work together on. Again, we've just talked about them. We assigned our staff to follow up on some of the details, so we don't have a specific announcement today. But I would think in the next couple of days, those are some of the things, if not all the things that were brought up by the 2 Democratic leaders are things we can work together on.
Representative Barker suggested that maybe the special session should be reserved for things that are going to provide more immediate results, and express some concern about things like the regulatory issues and health savings, that maybe those are more long-term and should not be a part of the special session. Mr. Taylor.
Well, we're certainly open to the initiatives that Representative Barca talked about. I would argue, and I think many of the things he brings up are good ideas, I would argue the most immediate impact is not going to be just from the technical reaction to what we passed. It's going to be from the reaction of employers who see a change, who not only take advantage of those changes, but who see the change. So for me, actually, regulatory relief does play a key part, because if you're an employer, and while there are plenty of employers in the state, like there are many people, unfortunately, who are hurting, there's also plenty of employers that I've found repeatedly around the state, both before the election, but even in the last 2 months, who tell me, we want to add jobs. We're ready to add jobs. In fact, when I was in here, I had a steady line of small business owners who told me, boy, I'm looking to add another 10, 15, 20 more employees. They were excited to hear what we talked about yesterday. The more we can show them that things are going to be easier to do business in the state in the future, the more I think they take that leap of faith and start putting the people to work even in the next few weeks. So I think in both cases, not just things that can be applied immediately, but things long-term, send a message that it's good to do business here in Wisconsin.
If you were going to veto any kind of a tax increase, why is it necessary to pass a bill that would require a supermajority?
Two reasons. One, I think it sends a clear message to employers that it's not just my point of view, but that it's the viewpoint of the members of the State Assembly and the State Senate. And secondly, I think it sets a long-term precedence. Even though legally, anyone here in this Capitol knows that you cannot, short of a constitutional amendment, tie the hands of a future legislature and a future governor. I know, having been here in the 90s when we passed 2/3 funding for school aids, it was up until recently before that was changed, even though technically there was nothing that bound the next legislature for enacting that. To me, I think putting that in the statutes, potentially even looking in the future about setting that aside as a constitutional amendment to further make that clear to the public, I think is an important message.
Scott, a follow-up on that issue. Some people say a fee increase is a tax increase. So how are you going to break out, this is a tax increase, it needs a supermajority, this is a fee increase and a borrowing?
Yeah, we define that, right, we define that through our statutory language, but to me, what I've always said, even aside from just the statutes, is if it is something that there's not an alternative to, that's more likely a tax. I mean, there's taxes out there, but when I was at the county, for example, if you had something at the local government level that applied to everyone who got garbage, and you know alternative garbage, that's not a fee increase, that's a tax increase. If you had something like a golf course or a boat slip or something specific where you have an option, that's a tax increase.
What about a license plate fee increase from 75 to 90, tax or fee?
Well, it's technically under the statutes a fee, but for us, again, we're going to try to avoid things that go across the board. We want to have options. When I look at transportation, I look at other alternatives out there, like, for example, are there ways that people want to go a premium for something? Could they get that? To me, that's a fee as opposed to a tax. If people don't have to do that, if there's an alternative out there, it's a fee as opposed to a tax.
You talk about consumer protection as it relates to tort reform. Last year, we reported that DATCAP was grossly exaggerating the amount of money returned to jilted consumers. And Representative Voss even called it consumer fraud in and of itself. What are your intentions in relation to the consumer protection element of the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection?
Well, we want to be strong, and part of it, and when you did that story, one of the things we noted was making sure there's a good working relationship through the Department of Justice as well as the Department of Trade, Agriculture, and Consumer Protection. So having Ben Bransell working hand in hand with J.B. Van Hollen and his staff, I think that's also very important to make sure that if there are consumer protection problems, those are things that immediately are turned over to the Department of Justice, and I think we can have a good working relationship on that. But again, not only in this department, but across the board, we want to be transparent. We want, whether it's there, whether it's talking about the Economic Development Corporation and how many jobs come in, I think it's important not only for the public, but it's important for me and our state agencies that we hold those agencies and those corporations accountable for whether it's consumer protection complaints, whether it's job creation goals. All those sorts of things are things that to be a good executive and be accountable to the people of the state, we need to have good numbers and we need to make them transparent and open to the public.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. We don't have time for
Well, I'd take last one, and the parts we can get back to cabinet. That's one of those where, you know, I'll have to look at the future. Certainly Representative Jeff Stone is someone I've worked with in the past, have a high degree of respect for, but we'll take a look at who all the candidates are out there and ultimately decide, one, whether or not I should get in, and two, whether or not it helps or hurts them. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. If you want to put your cameras around, we're going to have